in your book, page 31. And so again, Zeirut means learning how to become a human being. To become a human being means that you think before you do. Means that you make a choice, I'm doing this now. And you don't just let your desires or your habits to just like go take you where they want them to go. Right? Many people are like animals. The animal doesn't have freedom of choice. It just takes whatever it sees, it wants, and that's it. And some people act that way as well. So the first character we work on is how do I learn to become a human being? To pay attention, to make a choice. I want to do this. I'm making a conscious choice. I'm not going to live my life being dragged by my desires or by my society or by anything that's accepted. I will actually make a choice that I have freedom of choice. I'm a human being. The Ramchal says, if you don't do this, you don't do this character, you are lower than an animal. Because you have the ability to not live your life by your desires and by your instincts or whatever. Again, later on, once you reach the highest levels of the book, then you can let your desires drive you because you're already at a higher, it's a different level. But the beginning stages, you have to really take control of your life and say, I want to be the boss. In order to do that, we said you have to take 4 steps. You have to, number 1, understand in general what is Zeirut. What does it mean to pay attention? What does it mean to be aware, be conscious? Then you need to know what are the steps you take. And we said the steps you have to take are cheshbon nefesh, reviewing yourself, stopping and not letting the rat race pull you into it, but making a conscious decision where you stop and you review every day. That's what you have to do. Part 3 is motivation. How do I do that? Like, how do I motivate myself based on my personality, based on who I am? How do I discover who I am? And how do I motivate myself based on who I am? Because you could know exactly what to do, but if you don't have motivation, you won't do it. And part 4 is what's called maintenance and upkeep. That's where we are now. Everything in life, and this is the most incredible revelation, because many people think, okay, so you're telling me I get married, and then I have the worst relationship in the world. Like 80% of people who are married, they are emotionally divorced. They're not happy to be married. So are you telling me that's just the way it is? Are you telling me that there's no choice? Like you fall in love and then that's it? You're telling me everything in life that I work so hard to get, I'm going to lose it? The answer is no. And this is very comforting. The answer is no. If you take the steps of maintenance and upkeep, you can have your relationship not only be the way it always was, better than it was, but even better and better and better, and you can move up and it can become greater. Like you have a cup, leave it, don't touch it, dust, dirt will eat away at it and it will disappear. Everything gets destroyed in this world unless you do maintenance and upkeep. So you're not just a victim of circumstances and that's it. Life is just the way it is. You worked, you came to Machon Meir, you were excited, you were on fire, you came, you learned Torah, you were passionate, and then you go into life and it's gone. And this is the way it is. You have your period when you're young and full of love of God, but then you go into life and you lose that, and that's just the way it is. Accept it. The answer is no. If you take the steps of maintenance and upkeep, you can be in the same level of awareness, consciousness, excitement, passion as you are now in yeshiva, even when you go out into life, into work, into anything, anywhere you go in your life. If you take the steps that the Ramchal is going to tell you. So what are the steps? right? Because we see a lot of people, they come to yeshiva, they have their time when they were into it, and then they're not into it. Like you see it also. I remember when I was working on shlichut with students, they went to the concentration camps in in Poland, and they come back and but after a week or 2 weeks later, business as usual. So that's not the way it's supposed to be. There's things that you can do that you can keep that excitement, that passion, that awareness for your whole life. And what are those things? Rule number 1. Hine amafsida midazot. So here it's called Bi'ur. Also the headlines are very important. Be'ur mafsidei hazeirut ve'archaka mihem. The description of the chapters are very important. So this chapter tells us how mafsidei, how not to lose what we worked so hard to get, or if you haven't worked at all to get it, right? If you're at the beginning stage, you didn't go through the last 3 chapters. You're just starting. If you're starting right now the class at the 4th chapter, let's say right now it's your first class, harchaka mihem. These things will make the zeirut further away from you if you don't take these steps. Like we mentioned in the chapters before, the Yetzer Hara is very wise, very smart. You can't think that you're dealing with a simple challenge. You're dealing with a very sophisticated enemy. But we have the antidote. We've been around for a long time. We know all the techniques that the Yetzer Hara uses. And again, the Yetzer Hara is not a person. It's the desire for self-preservation that swallows up all of your existence. So the 3 steps that you need to take are Ha'echad, Hatipul v'Hatirda ha'olamit. Number 1 is the maintenance and the dealing with this world. You have concerns, you have issues that you have to constantly deal with. This world is constant maintenance, just of your body, your eating, sleeping, right? Dentist, doctor, all these things is a very, right? They basically take your time and keep you busy. Number 2, haschok vehalatzon. Laughter and jokes. We will explain that as well. And 3, hachevra hara'ah, the society, the social surroundings that you choose to associate yourself with them. These are the 3 things that you have to be on guard. Okay, so now the Ramchal will explain. Like we said, Ramchal gives you the headline, explains to you what are the issues, what are the topics, and now he goes into dealing with the solution. We already spoke about in the last chapter when we talked about in the last chapter of when we talked about the tricks of the Yetzer Hara, we said where he wants to, in the first chapter when we talked about the overview, we spoke about how the work, like Paro saw that we were starting to think about. Moshe Rabbeinu came and said, "I'm taking you out." We started thinking about spirituality right away. Let's make it harder. So we already spoke about that. But now we're here to talk about the solution. What are the steps we take? When a person is so involved with dealing with the issues of this world, I recommend everybody, if you can, watch the YouTube of the Chinese experiment, where they when you have the stones, you have big stones, small stones, and sand. And if you put the sand in first, there's no room for any stones, no room for anything. You put the big stones first, smaller stones, and then you put the sand in, everything fits in. So it's just to teach you a very important lesson that if you start dealing with the little issues of life, you'll go through your whole life and you'll never deal with the big things because you won't have time for it. So it could just swallow you up like this. The dealing with the errands of life, all of the issues, right? And therefore he says, if you're so preoccupied with your world, your mind, your thought, and the words here are very important, become enslaved. Asurot means you have how do you say bondage? You have asur is tied. Your hands are tied. Your thoughts are tied, right? In other words, if your whole world is just how do I take care of my physical existence, then you don't have a free mind, a free thought to become a new person. And that's what we're talking about. How do you become a new person? How do you go beyond? Because the height of a human being is, right, that's not what God created us for. To use everything for our, everything for technology and to make our physical life better. We're not against it. Like we spoke in the first chapter. The goal is not to have pleasure. Pleasure is a need. It's not the goal. You need to have pleasure in order to do the work that you have to do, that God created you for. But that's not why you were brought to this world, because to have pleasure, physical pleasures. So that's why the Torah, it says, "En lecha ben chorim el osek b'Torah." That, so what do I do? So what's the upkeep? What's the maintenance? Therefore, birotam, that's why the rabbi said, "Heve mema'et ba'esek ve'asok b'Torah." The rabbis told us, slow down, work a little less, don't overdo it. And now everything we're talking about here, Rav Tzurkaman says, we're talking about a person working for the access, for extras. Everything that you do for the extras becomes problematic. Everything you're doing for the necessities that you need, that's okay. But even for the necessities, we're not living 100 years ago, before the Industrial Revolution. Before the Industrial Revolution, everyone had to work. There was no machines. Everyone had to work to eat. If you didn't work 15 hours a day, there was no food. Today, there's no excuse that you need to work more than 8-9 hours a day. Maximum, right? There's no reason to do more than that, a full-time job. So you got to be careful, and that's what the rabbi said. We know you have a need, you need a parnasa, that's okay. But there's no excuse, like it says in the Gemara, that if somebody, there's no excuse, because if you're so rich, there was like that rabbi who was so rich and he still learned Torah. And if you're so poor, it's like Rav Hillel, or was it, who was so poor but he still learned Torah. Now there is no excuse that you could say, because I was so rich I didn't have time, I had too much work. Or because I was so poor I didn't have time, right? There's no excuse. It's a decision. And like we said, the minimal amount for a person to learn, half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the night. Make a time to learn Torah. The best is, every free moment, learn Torah. That's the best. How do you do it? Today with the smartphones? Very easy. With books, just take a book with you. Every time I go somewhere and I don't take a book with me, I can't believe how much Bittul Torah. I think back, I do my Cheshbon Nefesh. Wow, I would have had so much time to learn if I just had a book. A Parsha, something easy, something, some Torah book. Always take with you a book. You're standing in line, you're on a bus, you're this. Or, if you like listening to classes, every topic, there's no excuse. At every moment, you have the ability to be learning, right? And that's why it says likvoa itim la Torah. One of the first questions they ask you: when you go to Shemayim, did you set a time for learning Torah? Because it's a decision. You have to put it into your schedule. And make a decision. I try in the mornings to learn till 9:30. That's what I try to do. I have my learning. Every job I had, I always said, I learned till 9:30. Thank God I was able to do it. I learned till 9:30. Rav Tzurkaman said that if the workplaces, the way they should work, is you come to work, you clock in your your cart, you learn for an hour, and then you start to work as part of your work. So that's what we're saying is you can't do it without Torah. That's the only solution, right? Like we said, you have to work, you need to make a living, it's okay, but you have to likvoi tim Torah, and that's the time. En lecha ben chorim ela mi shosek b'Torah. You are not. There is no such a thing. The Torah says charut al aluchot. Pirkei Avot. The Torah is engraved in your heart. What does it mean? Charut. Engraved is the same word as cherut, freedom. The only person who is free is a person who learns Torah. The Torah takes you and releases you. It says, if you accept on yourself the yoke of heaven, they take off of you the yoke of this world, of this world. And that's why, that's number one. And it's very important to know, like when you're learning Torah, a lot of the subjects you're learning have nothing to do to apply with your day-to-day life. You could be learning something in Gemara, it has nothing, the Beit HaMikdash and the Karbanot. Learn to be in a place of connecting to God, loving the Torah, connecting, come free, have, like we said, this is freedom. There's a song Rabbi Levi wrote that Avdei Hazman Avadei Avadim Hem. The slaves, the servants, or the workers of time are slaves of slaves. Eved Hashem hu levado chofshi. A servant of God, he is the only one that is free. This is freedom. This is what we want. Not to feel that you are a slave. You could be a slave, but your spirit is free. And that's what we're talking about. There's a slave whose spirit is free, and there's a free person whose spirit is enslaved. And we want to be a free person, and the only way to become free is from learning Torah. That's what it says. Rabbi Pinchas, the beginning of the Braita, Torah mevia lidei zehirut. There's no other way. Vezulata lo yagia elav klal. And that's why it says v'lo ma'arotz chasid. V'zeh, and this is from remember, God created the Yetzer Hara. Ki haborei yitbarach shemo bara Yetzer Hara. Right? And he created the Yetzer Hara. Vehu bara Torah tavlin. And he created the Torah as the antidote. As the tavlin is like you have a meal and you put a little bit of spice. That little bit of spice changes the whole entire from the food tasting bland and no taste and you get no enjoyment. Food that has no seasoning tastes like you're eating sand. You put a little bit of spices, so your whole reality, you make 180-degree change because of one thing. You decided that you will learn Torah. You'll make a time for learning Torah in the morning or in the night. You decided, and this is what makes the whole life, your whole reality. Everything gets meaning, purpose, excitement, change, growth. Everything begins and ends from the Torah. People are looking for all these techniques of meditations and all these other things and going half around the world and all these hikes. You're not going to find it. Because God says, I created the problem and I created the antidote. Nothing else is going to work. Right? That's it. And it's a very powerful, like we said, the Yetzer Hara is very strong. And a person thinks that he's becoming a free thinker and he feels that way. But you have to know it's not the case. And suddenly you're learning Torah and you become free. Suddenly you're able to think that I just want to do good for the sake of good. People can't even understand. You do something nice for somebody. Oh, what do you want from me? Right? Because that's how it works, right? If you get, like, I want something from you. Especially the marketing companies, they give you for free things. It's all to make you feel that you owe them, to make you, right? But there is a world that's connected to God, connected to just learning things that have no practical application, just for the sake of God, l'shem shamayim, for closeness of God. And he says, this is what he says. If God created the problem, v'zeh pashut, כי אם הקדוש ברוך הוא לא ברא למכה זו או לפרעה זו, if God says, for this, how do you say, you have wound, this is the only medication. And by the way, it's important to know, if we're giving this example of medication, you don't always have to enjoy, like, I'm learning Torah, I don't enjoy it so much. Do you enjoy taking medication? It's not always so sweet. It's not like that we spoke about the Chavat Al-Vavot, the first book of Tikkun Midot. He talks about, if you're not willing to take the bitter pill of growth, it's going to be painful. Then you can't even start. It doesn't mean that the spiritual growth has to be painful, but you have to be willing for it to be painful. You have to it won't be, maybe it's not sweet. And by the way, like the Rambam says, a person who's sick, he tastes the bitter sweet and sweet bitter, because he's sick. So if we're learning Torah and I don't feel the excitement, I don't feel the passion, okay, but I'm taking my medication. This is what will help me. This is what will help me survive. People that have schizophrenia or other mental illness, and they don't think they have a problem. That's the biggest problem, is they don't think they have a problem. If they take their medication, they can live their whole life stable. If not, they destroy themselves and destroy others. So we're all created with a mal. How do you say? We all created with, there's a sickness. We're created sick. We have a wound, and God tells us this is the reality, and this is the medication, the Torah. Don't try to find it somewhere else. It's not somewhere else. It's right here in the Torah learning that we have to learn. And what should I learn? What Torah? Very simple. En adam lomed Torah el makom shelibo chafetz. Study in the place that gives you feel enjoyment. That's it. So I said to my rabbi, I have a hard time learning Gemara, and he says, study the stories in the Gemara. That's Gemara also. But you have to learn Gemara every day. Can't just learn other subjects. The main other subjects could be your main thing, but you need Gemara. That's where you experience the real, that's the main, where you really experience what Judaism is about. And there's two ways to learn Gemara I was just learning. One way is like you're an observer, you're watching it from outside. That we call bikiut, right? Just going over seeing the big picture. And iyun is you are actually now in the discussion, taking part. So you don't go over large amounts. You sit on one piece, and you're part of the debate. You're in the room with these people, and you're giving your opinion, and you're saying what you think. That's the way to learn Gemara, right? So, and that's it. That's the only solution, and it's very simple. Therefore, and he talks here about the problem where that the Yetzirah is very powerful. And slowly, it doesn't happen one day. The Yetzirah has it builds up. Slowly controls you. You don't realize you're getting sucked in. Without even being aware. Suddenly, wow, where am I? How did I become so far from Torah mitzvahs? How did I become so far from the spiritual place where I want to be? How? It happened gradually, very slowly. The Yetzirah has a long-term goal. Like it says, Lafetach hatat rovet. The Yetzirah is sitting at the opening and waiting for the right moment to attack. And slowly, gradually conquering more and more. And if you don't use this medication, you won't understand it and you'll be gone. He says it's like people go. There's someone that was sick, and he goes to someone who he thought he was a doctor, and he says, "Can you help me?" And the person had a good heart. Maybe many of these spiritual leaders or whatever, they really want to help, but they don't know. They're not doctors. I remember once someone, I couldn't believe it, one of these spiritual type of healers. I said, "How do you do your work?" Well, I have all these, glasses of different herbal tinctures, and I kind of just feel this one, that one. First of all, those tinctures don't do anything, and secondly, that's the way you do it, where I feel this one, I feel that one. That's nonsense. It has to be measured. It has to be something that is proven, something that is scientific. And so even that person could have great intentions, the person will die. And I actually know people who had diseases. Instead of going to real doctors, they went to these, what's called medicine, healer doctors. And then by the time they went to the real doctors, it was too late. So it's not just he gives an example, but it actually happens for real. This issue of people going to people searching for new ways to discover how do we deal with this pain, right? Anyway, anyone who's really for real feels this soul is thirsty, feels that there's something missing. So unfortunately, people look for lots of different solutions, but this solution is tested. This solution is proven. It works for thousands of years. We don't need to, now that the rabbis, now people are saying, what do we do? Students don't want to learn Gemara. So maybe, we should teach new ways. The answer is no. The ways that we have are perfect. People just have to want to learn, have to be excited about it, have to be understand the depth and the greatness of it, and have to, most of all, understand by the way, this is what my rabbi was saying. One of the big reasons why people don't learn, because they don't have the big picture. First, explain the big picture of the Gemara, and then explain how the details. Nobody wants to deal with the details, but when you understand that the details fit into the big picture, that's when you're willing to put in the effort and the time, because you understand the value of it. So that's number one. The solution, the medication is the Torah, and if you don't take it, the darkness of the materialism will just go and expand until you find yourself sunk in and so far from the truth. So far, see, what is hirhur? Hirhur is, I have a thought, like we talked about that. We're going to talk about that in Slizut, but a thought, I should do something good. A thought of a person who is so sunk into the materialism, he doesn't have those thoughts anymore. Unfortunately, you don't even get those. You don't hear it. It's like you're so bogged down by all of the materialism, you can't hear it. And that's what we want to hear. Our soul. We want to hear those thoughts, those ideas that come up. Do something good. Do the right thing. Get close to God. The answer is Torah. But if you learn Torah, bir'oto, drachea, you see drachea, tzivu'ea vazotea. You see all of the drachea, like we said. You see all of the paths of God and the commandments and the warnings. You'll be awakened and you will go towards the positivity. This is what the rabbi said. The prophet says, Halavai oti azvu v'torati shamaru. I wish they would only leave me, but still keep the Torah. In other words, this is also an important lesson. Even if you find yourself sucked into a very negative place, keep learning Torah. Never stop learning Torah. Even if you think that I'm so far and how could I learn Torah when I'm in such a bad place? What do you mean? This is the only thing. Just keep learning. Don't worry about where you're at. Don't worry about what you think I'm not so great and I'm already too far gone. You're never too far gone. And this is the rope. This is the God throwing you the how do you say, the life vest? Life what's it called? In Hebrew we say galgal hatzalah. The what's it called when they in the boats they have those life vest, life raft or whatever. Life raft.
You mean like the rings?
Yeah.
But you life vest, but I'm not sure.
As long as you understand the idea,
yeah.
is that this is it. The Torah will bring you back. So this, even if you leave everything, keep learning Torah. God, that's what it says. Halavai oti azvu, v'torati shemau. I wish they would only leave me, but still keeping my learning the Torah. So it's an amazing thing. In other words, whatever situation you are, no matter how far you've gone, don't stop learning Torah. Because why? The light in the Torah will bring you back. So that's a very important lesson. Don't ever stop learning Torah. So that's number one. And the Ramchal's Chiddush here. What else besides learning Torah? And cheshbon nefesh. I want you to know, says the Ramchal, is his Chiddush, the time that you spend reviewing your day is like learning Torah. It's on the same level as if you're sitting and learning Gemara, Torah, Halacha. That time, that's his Chiddush, and it's true. Right? So this is not just like a waste of time or, okay, I learned Torah, now I close the book, and now I go do cheshbon nefesh. No, you now are continuing to learn Torah through the time that you're doing the cheshbon nefesh. Like we said, it doesn't take a long time, but the time that you put aside to review yourself and to try to see how to fix. That is what we call cheshbon ha'maaseh and fixing it. And besides this, my personal advice, says the Ramchal, kol ma shisher lo panai me'asakav, any extra time that you have that you're not involved in dealing with working for the essentials, like we said, use that time for learning Torah, learn that time for how to become a better person. Take advantage of those. There's no such a thing in Judaism, kill time. I'm going to kill some time, I have a meeting in an hour. No way. You have time, break a book with you, listen to a class. Try to always be. There's a book called Cheshbon Nefesh by Rabbi Satnov. His name was, and he says there that a person should always think, what am I doing now that's helping myself and that's helping others? Always ask yourself those two questions. What am I doing now that's helping me, or I'm doing now that's helping others? Is this helping me? I'm doing exercise. Is this helping me right now? Is it helping me? Is it helping others? Those are the two questions to ask yourself. Right? And the Ramchal says, Zeh mafsid afal pi sheyoter klali. This, like we said, this issue of why do people lose zehirut is because they go into the workforce and they become workaholics. And they become workaholic is somebody who is mentally ill. There's no excuse to work nonstop. Doesn't matter who you are, how important you are, how many workers you have. You always have time for Torah learning. Like we said, it could be a half an hour in the morning, it could be a half an hour in the night, but it has to be a decision. It has to be a time that is sacred, a time that is, like we said, or just learn every free chance you have. Get into that mode. You get in your car, you have a class ready to go that starts a Torah class. Right? Whatever it is. Prepare yourself. The right books for traveling, for here, things that you know won't be too hard for you, things that are easy, that are, you don't have to get too in depth, different levels of learning. But always, he says, this is easy. This is the easiest one. Yoter kal lemish rotzeh limadet You have to want to get out of the slavery, of the rat race. You have to want to. The mishirotzeli malet. Second one is, he said, kashe me'od. If the Ramchal says that the second one is kashe me'od, that's very serious. Now we're on to number 2. So we spoke about Torah. Any questions, or did we get it? It's pretty loud and clear, right? Number 2, he said, and this is easy because all you have to do is put it in your calendar, put it in your schedule every night before you go to sleep. Say, okay, my schedule for tomorrow. Where am I learning Torah? Prepare, plan, just put it in, and that's it. I have my Torah learning, and there's no one I need to talk to. Number 2 is kashe me'od. Aschok v'halatzon. Aschok is when you make everything into a joke, everything into laughter. What is a joke and laughter all about? It's a psychological method in order to, protect yourself from, it's a weakness. A person has a weakness, and in order to not show his weakness, he prepares this mechanism of making everything into a joke. Sometimes it could come because they socially want to be accepted, and it's very sad. People that I'm sure you meet people like this. They can't say one word without it being cynical or a joke or making fun of somebody. They can't do it. It's like he says here, a person that gets sucked into this place of laughters and jokes, and unfortunately, it's a huge industry. You go look on all of these comedies and all of these shows. It's all about these jokes, and people watch this all day, and they start talking, they start thinking this way. You can't say one word to these people. Everything's a joke. Somebody like this is drowning in a huge ocean. You can't talk to them. They're drowning. You try to talk to them, they pull you in. A person and you have to be on guard. Because if the Ramchal is saying that this is what makes us lose Zeirut, means that each and every one of us are in danger of getting pulled into this place of everything is a joke. Nothing has meaning. Nothing has value. Nothing has depth. Rav Tzukerman says, Retzini, to be a serious person, comes from the word Retzon. Retzini comes from the word Retzon. To be a serious person means you see Retzon Hashem in everything. You see the will of God in everything. There's nothing that is how do you say, not important, not meaningful. Oh, really? Tell me more about it. I was just I'm learning to be a teacher, and I went to teach at a school. And I went to teach at a school, and I sat in. I had to sit 10 hours and watch a teacher teach, and I had to teach 15 hours. So I sat in the class and I watched this teacher, who's 40 years a teacher, and he's the master teacher. And I sat and I took notes on how does he teach. And I sat in a class of the most difficult kids in the school. I went to different classes, and this teacher taught in the most difficult class, very, very difficult kids. And he was amazing. He built the trust and the love with the kids, and I saw that he had the perfect balance of making jokes, but not too much. And then at the end of the class, he says to the students, listen to me. I know I joke around with you a little bit, but I could be joking around with you, and you could, everyone's laughing, but deep down you feel that you're embarrassed. You feel that you're hurt by me. And I did that in front of everybody. If I happen to do that, because he's joking, and one kid has they have an eyebrow ring, so he calls him, eyebrow, hey eyebrow, whatever, right? But if I made a joke about you and that hurt you, I have to apologize in front of everybody. So come to me privately after and tell me, so I can apologize, because I want to make jokes, but I don't want a joke could really hurt somebody. I was so impressed by that. For a teacher to be able to say, I'm joking around, but I don't want I never know when I'm joking and really it hurts you. So if I said something that hurt you or you felt that went overboard, tell me so I can apologize. So we're saying this, you have to be, especially today with all of the comedy movies and shows, and it's very easy to get sucked in, to become the light of the party, the funny guy, the one that always has something smart to say. He says, a person that becomes a joker, he's like a drunk person or like a crazy person. You can't tell them anything. They can't hear you. And that's what...
Are you just talking about like normal people or comedians? Like
everybody.
People do it for a profession.
I'm saying every person, again, it's okay. We're not talking about not making a joke. We're not talking about being funny or being, we're talking about when it takes over. When it's not like a joke here and there. You can't, we're talking about personality. You can't stop. Everything is cynical. Everything's a joke. Here, like Ramchal says, that tzchok ve'akalut rosh margilim, the Pirkei Avot, margilim et adam le'erva. A person makes a joke about everything. There's like a border between people. This woman's a married woman, and I'm, right? So I have to keep a distance. There's a distance. The jokes, that person starts joking around, flirting with, and it happens unfortunately since women went into the workforce. There's a lot of the statistics show very high levels of unfortunate things happening. But as soon as jokes start, the person doesn't even realize it. The borders, the walls of this distance between us break down slowly. The jokes are very funny, and those jokes bring closeness, and then it gets closer and closer, and then a person finds himself, even though if you would come to that person, say to him, would you imagine that you would go with a married woman? Never. What are you talking about? There's no greater crime, and there's no greater punishment. But this happens, is that hayirah sara me'alav, slowly, that a person will actually do the act. Why? Just because of jokes. And I remember I started working in Tel Aviv a few years ago, and the secretary came in, she started calling me mommy, and all these motek. I said, I'm a religious person. If you could please keep our conversations very, how do you say, inyani? Like, if you have to talk to me about something, please keep it very professional, without all of the. So maybe she was hurt, and just okay. But if someone, I wouldn't say that for someone I meet her once, but it's somebody I'm working with every day. So it's very important to set the tone that I'm not going to be flirting with you, and I'm not going to be laughing around with you and making jokes, and that happens. That it breaks down the barriers, and therefore, it makes you lose that ability to make freedom of choice. That's what we're talking about. Your freedom of choice, your decision in life, the jokes, the laughing, making small of everything. And he says, because when you make a joke of everything, you're not looking at depth. You have to look at life and really look at everything in depth. When you make a joke, so you're looking only superficially. And that's what he says. It's like you have in war, they used to take these shields, they would put oil on it, and then when the spear would come, it would bounce off the shield. So a person who makes a joke of everything, it's like you have a shield. It's like we said, it's a psychological mechanism to not let anything in, because you don't want to be vulnerable. You don't want to be, how do you say, or because you feel it's a weakness. And instead of dealing with the weakness, you put on a show, you put on a show. In other words, those spears, take things to heart, is the most wonderful thing in the world. It says in the Gemara, Yafa makat mardut belibo shel adam mi-elef malkuyot. Better is one spear that goes in, one message that you take to heart, than 1,000 beatings. Understand what I'm telling you. No. Let it in yourself. Is better than 1,000 lashes. In other words, and that will not go in. There's nobody to talk to. And therefore, unfortunately, right, he says you could see. You have a serious class or a serious issue you're dealing with. Somebody comes, bikoch leitzanut, makes a joke of everything, and all of that ability to have that impression is gone. Because that person just made a joke. And suddenly everything is just out the drain. So like we said, this is very, and it's not because what the message was weak. It's because that power of jokes is something that is destructive and dangerous. We're not talking about not making a joke and not being funny but we're talking about excess. You watch it, you say a joke here and there, you watch a movie, you watch something, a funny thing, that's great. But to sit hours and watching, laughter, it's not the Jewish way. It's very dangerous. It brings lots of destructive things, and unfortunately, the only way for a person who gets sucked in to this place of jokes and laughter about everything, the only way to get out of it is suffering. That's what he says. Nachonu leletzim shvatim. It's the only way, because when a person is going through suffering, suddenly he becomes serious again. And we should not. We say in the prayers, "Bring me back." Please, in Yom Kippur we say, "Please wake us up without the suffering and the difficulties," because sometimes that's the only way to get out of it. A person that gets sucked into this place of laughter and jokes, and the only way is suffering. And it's very important. Like we said, it happens slowly, and it builds up. You come into work, you joke with the secretary, and then a little more, and then every day, and then more, and then stop. Number 2. Okay, so let's daven that we should not go to that place. Unfortunately, the third one, the last one, is chevara, society, and this is a very big one. The surroundings. A person, the Rambam says, derech ha'adam liot nimshach achar re'av. A person, the way a person wants to feel that they fit in, a person wants to feel that he belongs, he wants to feel that he's accepted, and therefore, if you're in yeshiva, you're here surrounded by people that are all here to grow, they're all here to do good, all here to do the service of God. Wow, it's like a bubble of holiness. You go into the world, it's not exactly like that. Like Rabbi always says, the Knesset is not a Beit Knesset, right? So now you're here with people, and I'm saying it's a different type of people that you're seeing yourself. You go out to the world, people are out to kill. Unfortunately, the Rav Kook said that education has 2 goals in Judaism. In the secular world, it has 1 goal. In the secular world, there's 1 goal, is that to prepare you for the battle of life. You're going out to the world, you have to fight for your food. You have to be ready. So from kindergarten, preparing you for university. You need to, right? In Judaism, we have 2 goals. To make a person who is tov v'yashar, kind and good, and then to prepare you for the battle of life. And being kind and good comes first. So this is the society, and we see, you see, that's why it's so important. Unfortunately, today, society says a lot of things that we couldn't even believe that would be considered accepted today are considered accepted. They have parades around Jerusalem and all kinds of things where things that people saw as a mental illness or a sickness or as unacceptable are now acceptable, and anybody who says otherwise is threatening the consensus, is threatening the society, and therefore we have to destroy those people, right? Because people don't like people that think differently. Because if you think differently, you're threatening because we all think the same. People like to think the same. People like to dance to the same flute. But you have rabbis who are free. They say what they think. They don't agree with what everybody says is okay. and they become the enemy. Oh, you think you're better than us? You think because you're different than what's accepted. And therefore, you have to choose the society, the people that you associate yourself with. And that's the way it is. King David, Shlomo HaMelech, here he brings the example. They, even though they had to be with all these different types of people, King David is sitting at a gathering with ministers and kings. And what are they interested in? Power, money, women, right? Control. They don't care about. And he would start talking about Dvar Torah. Adabra be'edotecha. Neged melachim velo evosh. And I'm not embarrassed. I don't care. It doesn't interest them. They don't want to hear about it. I have Torah to say. Now it's very important to know there are certain people that God gave you a personal connection to, which are your family. And those people, you don't say, I'm not going to go with my family. They're not Torah people. They're not religious. They're not Jewish. Who knows what? They're your family. They're people that God gave you, have a personal ability to have an effect on them. And therefore, these type of people, you don't distance yourself with, but you want to choose. So then King David says, yeah, but the Ramchal says, yeah, but what do you mean? It says, Leolam tiyedato shel adam morevet im habriot. A person has to be, you have to be associated with people. You can't just be detached. And he says, you can see that many times a person, he chose a path, and he will leave that path, not because he wasn't convinced about the importance of it or the trueness of it, but because of his friends will laugh at him. The society will look down on him. And a person does not want that. It's such a powerful, what we call peer pressure. People do drugs, like my rabbi said he was at a funeral, a guy took drugs first time and died. Because the pressure of try it, do it. I don't like drinking alcohol, and when I'm at kiddushes, it's hard. The pressure of drink is so hard. I hate drinking. I don't like drinking. It makes me feel sick. I don't like it. And it's hard. I'm like, that's like I call it dodging the shots. People are like, take this, take that, drink it. Thank you, l'chaim. I don't need it. But why? It's this, people can't find, other ways to get excited or connect. But you don't need the alcohol to do it. But we're just saying that the pressure is very much. So Ramchal says, but what do you do about what says you should be connected to people and not detach yourself? Yeah, people who are acting. אמור לו. במה דברים אומרים? בני אדם שעושים מעשה אדם. I want to associate people are acting like people, not people are acting like animals. That is not what it says. What you should associate yourself with people. So I want to end with here because we're already at the end of our time, and I want to give a little plug on our next week's class. We're starting next week the first series of Zrizut. We said till now, a person who has Zehirut is, you are now, if you don't have Zehirut, you're worse than an animal. Because animals have awareness for their body, you need to have awareness for your soul. That's what Zehirut is. Right? Animal feels the danger, it runs. So you should also have that. And if you don't do that, then you're less than an animal because they have it. So why don't you have it? But the next chapter, we're not going to say if you don't have it, you're worse than an animal. We're going to Zrizut. Zrizut is, how do I defy gravity? Gravity means that it's pulling me down. It's heavy. Right? We come from the earth. We have this very lazy side. We have this very heavy aspect of ourselves. How do I become? We have Ish and we're called Ish and we're called Adam. Adam comes from Adama, and Ish comes from fire, Esh. How do I ignite? How do I do things? How do I excite the excitement, the joy, the happiness, the passion, the movement? How do I get this? Again, how do you get this? Zrizut, you have to take the 4 steps. understand the overview, understand what you have to do in step by step. How do I motivate myself? And then what do I do not to lose it? Because we see Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, they're always running. Rivka's running. Sarah's running. Why were they always running? They were running because they were excited. They were full of passion. They were full of love. They went above nature. That's the next. Sorry, Rabbi. So I was just giving the plug for the next week.